Everybody knows about Mataji, but it's our etiquette to introduce and glorify Vaishnava. So Mataji is participating in many temple services in the background. Mataji was a big support in raising funds for temple. She has been continuing to support along with Rahul Prabhu. She is pillar of our congregation. Mataji's classes are very simple and understandable way to implement. She is well known for her melodious Kirtans. With that, we will welcome Suvarna Manjarai Mataji with loudly chanting one time Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Mataji, over to you.
Thank you, Prabhu. We have nice speakers every Sunday, not just this Sunday. So just wanted to share that. So let us start with Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Bihari.
Jai Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Bihari.
Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jayo Girivaradhari. Jayo
Vijana Vallabha, Jayo Girivaradhari.
Jayo Girivaradhari.
Jayo Girivaradhari.
Jayo Yashodanandana, Jayo Braja Janaranjana.
Jayo Yashodanandana, Jayo Vraja Janaranjana.
Jayo Yamuna Tiravanachari, Jayo Kunja Bihari.
Jayo Yamuna Vanachari, Jayo Kunja Bihari.
Jayo Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Bihari.
Jayo Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Bihari.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jayo Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Bihari.
Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Bihari.
Hare Krishna, everyone. I hope everybody had a reasonably safe and inconvenient week with the storms. I know many people lost power and internet, but we are back to normal now. So we'll start with our pranam mantras, and then we will go on to reading from chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita. Om Ajnanaatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadkamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Tyam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakham Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Before we go to the verse, I think one very important verse in Shikshashtakam, which I want to start reciting before I do any class, is verse number 3 from Shikshashtakam. Trinadapi sunichena taroreva sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. One who thinks of himself lower than the grass, who is more tolerant than a tree, and who does not expect personal honor, but is always prepared to give all respect to others, can very easily always chant the holy name of the Lord. So this is the state in which we want to be, we aspire to be, whether it is for our chanting or our devotional service. So today's today's verse is from chapter 7. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I was inspired by Radha Govind Prabhu's class last week. I was thinking, what verse? I think this is the hardest part. What verse should we pick? It's like, women in the morning are thinking, what should we cook today? So whenever it's time for class, there's so much you can pick from that what verse should I pick? And Radha Vinod Prabhu left it at this verse. So I thought, why not pick up from this verse and get a, more solid understanding and foundation on chapter 7, which he spoke from. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate Vasudevah sarvam iti sa mahatma sudurlabha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me. knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So the whole chapter 7 actually talks about, it's named knowledge of the absolute, and in Hindi it is Jnana Vigyan, because Gyan is knowledge, but Vigyan is scientific. So our scriptures, our Bhagavad Gita is scientific spiritual knowledge. It's not just mundane knowledge, as Vishnu was saying in his translation or interpretation, not just mundane knowledge. It is spiritual, scientific, transcendental knowledge. So we'll go to the purport first, and then we'll talk about some realizations and more about chapter 7, because as I was preparing, I felt that this verse is incomplete without understanding the verses before this and understanding the verses after this. So, reading from Srila Prabhupada's purport. The living entity, while executing devotional service or transcendental rituals after many, many births, may actually become situated in transcendental, pure knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. In the beginning of spiritual realization, while one is trying to give up one's attachment to materialism, there is some leaning towards impersonalism, but when one is further advanced, he can understand that there are activities in spiritual life, and these activities constitute devotional service. Realizing this, he becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrenders to him. At such time, one can understand that Lord Sri Krishna's mercy is everything, that he is the cause of all causes, and that this material manifestation is not independent from him. He realizes the material world to be a perverted reflection of spiritual variegatedness, and realizes that in everything there is a relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Thus he thinks of everything in relation to Vasudeva or Sri Krishna. Such a universal vision of Vasudeva precipitates one's full surrender to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna as the highest goal. Such surrendered great souls are very rare. So a few things here that caught my attention. First and foremost, they're saying, Srila Prabhupada is saying, one thing we have to understand, that the ultimate goal of devotional service is spiritual realization. It is not for any, entertainment activity that we do. But activity is a part of life. You cannot be without activity. You will do something. You will eat or you will not eat. You will cook or you will not cook. You will study or you will not study. So you are doing something all the time. So the way to develop attachment to Krishna is by doing activity for Krishna. Whether you are thinking of Krishna, whether you are serving Krishna, whether you are chanting, whether you are preparing bhoga for Krishna, if you are doing your activities in spiritual life towards Krishna, that constitutes devotional service. And then one more thing here in this purport, which I thought was tying it to chapter 15, is that the material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. In chapter 15, it starts off with, the banyan tree, which has its roots at the top and branches at the bottom. So continuing on Srila Prabhupada's purport, this verse is very nicely explained in the 3rd chapter, verses 14 and 15 of the Shweta Swatara Upanishad. Sahasra Shirsa Purusha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat Sabhumim Vishvato Vrata Tyatishtad Dashangulam Purusha Evedyam Sarvam Yadbhutam Yacha Bhavyam Utamrita Vaisano Yad Annena Tirohati. So, what this means is, Lord Vishnu has thousands of heads, thousands of eyes, thousands of feet, entirely encompassing the whole universe. He still extends beyond by 10 fingers breadth. He's in fact this entire universe. He's all that was, all that will be, and all that is. He's Lord of immortality, and all of that is nourished by food. In the next Upanishad, it says, in the body of a living being, neither the power to speak, nor the power to see, nor the power to hear, nor the power to think is the prime factor. It is life which is the center of all activities. Similarly, Vasudeva, or the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is the prime entity in everything. In this body, there are powers of speaking, of seeing, of hearing, of mental activities, but these are not important if not related to the Supreme Lord. And because Vasudeva is all-pervading and everything is Vasudeva, the devotee surrenders in full knowledge to Krishna. So, interesting thing is that we think that we did this, okay, we got this grade, we got this, we won this competition, somebody's going for science Olympiad, somebody's going for math Olympiad. They're working very hard for it. Somebody's, in American Idol, Indian Idol, all of that. And we're praising the person, right? We're praising, wow, what a genius this person is. What a great voice this person has, But where did they get these skills from? We have to praise. Yes, we praise the person, but we praise the Lord who gave them those skills. Because who are we to be proud of these skills? We don't own anything. Nothing that we have really belongs to us. We've borrowed this from Krishna for this lifetime, okay? So always remember, whether it is the beauty in nature or whether it is, a child who is excelling in everything they do, or whether you are at the top of, like people, have so much passion for celebrities. And it's funny that from childhood, I never thought anything high of celebrities, because I'm like, they're also people. And just because you see them in different ways, that doesn't make them special. So we should consider people who do something for us or who do something for Krishna as special, not celebrities who are in the business of coming out once a day in Bombay. Anybody who's been to Bombay knows most of the film stars will come out once a day, and there are crowds and crowds waiting there, and they'll stand for 5 minutes and wave, and people are like enamored by this. I have always wondered why, not after getting into Krishna consciousness, but even as a child. I remember on my first airplane flight, there was Dharmendra at the airport, and everybody was rushing towards him. And I saw him from a distance. I'm like, I'm not going to go rush towards him. He's just another person. So what if he's famous? He's just another person. And I was telling, when we were going to India this time, one of the Indian comedians, Hassan Minhaj, was at the airport. So I was telling Shreya, she said, why didn't you take a selfie with him? I said, I don't want to take a selfie with him. I don't care for him. He was at the airport, and that was it. So what I'm saying is, the important thing is not who you are or whether you are accomplished. The important thing is, where did they get this skill? Where did they get this good fortune from? That came from Krishna. So nothing is independent of Krishna. We should never think that I did this. Many years ago, a friend of mine was talking about her brother-in-law, and who came from a village. You've heard the story, rags to riches. You hear that all the time, right? So she was saying, he's a self-made man, and this and that. And I was like, okay, fine. I didn't like the tone, but I didn't know her too well, so I didn't want to say anything, because you don't want to be offensive of anybody. But I just felt something not right about the way she spoke. A few years later, her sister divorced from this person. And then it was like the complete opposite. This is such an awful person, and this and that. So we are just judging people. It's not about the skills, or we stop at the material level when we are in this life. We have to go beyond this material level and say, no, none of this is real. All of this is role play that we are doing in this life. And the reality is each of one has been given a role. And how we conduct our role is up to us, with how much passion we conduct our role. And all of us in this human birth were given one role, and that is to rebuild our relationship with Krishna. Some chose a different role. They say, I don't like this role, I'm going to go to a new role. And very few, very, very few who realized that this was the role for which they were here, they are moving to, they're trying to. Not all, I can't even say they're doing it in perfection. We are all trying to do our role. So whenever you see, hear, or realize that something is beautiful, something is amazing, remember this all came from Krishna and we didn't make this. Continuing on the purport, in this chapter, Lord Krishna explains that there are two paths a person can take in life. The path of ignorance, where people are attached to material desires and pleasures, and the path of knowledge, where people seek spiritual realization. He then explains that the ultimate reality is the Supreme Being, who is the source of all existence and is beyond this material world. Lord Krishna also describes the nature of the soul, which is eternal and unchanging. So, even though our bodies change, our environment change, what we carry with us from lifetime to lifetime is the unchanging and eternal soul. And the body, which is temporary and subject to birth and death, he explains that the soul, being part of the Supreme Being, has the potential to attain liberation through devotion to the Supreme Being. In conclusion, Lord Krishna emphasizes that the path of knowledge and devotion to the Supreme Being is the only way to attain liberation and escape the cycle of birth and death. He encourages Arjuna to take this path and attain peace and eternal happiness. So this morning I was thinking, we all suffer, right? Whether it is bodily suffering, relationships, financial, emotional, various levels of suffering, right? Just one day we didn't have internet at our house and it felt like suffering, okay? So because that is how we relate to. So all our suffering is actually material. Okay, the soul is not suffering, the body is suffering. And somehow we have all gotten so comfortable with suffering that we say, yeah, suffering is part of life, right? You think about it, why have we become so comfortable with suffering? Normally, when there is something not according to our desires, we try to change it, correct? So why is it that this material suffering, we just accept, oh yeah, when I'm going to get old, I'm going to get sick, everybody has problems in life. You hear that from any therapist, any psychologist, or any person. Even the parents will say this to their children. This is normal. Suffering is normal. But why? Why are we not asking the question that I don't want to suffer. What should I do to not suffer? What should I do to break out of this suffering? Like how that caterpillar breaks out and becomes a butterfly. Why are we not trying to do that? Why are we accepting suffering as part of our life? So that is the first thing we need to say is, why should suffering be normal? Because we've just accepted it as normal. So we've become very comfortable living with it. The reality is we need to change that mindset and we need to say, no, I want to break out of this suffering. I want to be in a place where there is no suffering. I want to be in a place where there is no anxiety. I want to be in a place where there is no lamentation, no competition, no trying to make a living and getting laid off. None of that happens. I want to be in one of those worlds. We have to strive for that. Every goal starts with a thought. So we need to, and I'm guilty of doing that also. Yeah, we're going to suffer, we're going to get sick, we're going to have all that. And then it came to me that no, we don't want this. We want something different. And if we want something different, we have to set a goal. And when you have to set a goal, which is a very ambitious goal, they call it a big, audacious goal, then we have to set milestones. We have to set a path, a journey. And when we set that path, then we have to execute, take action on that path. If this is true for what we do in school, if this is true for what we do in office, then this is true for what we want to do to break out of suffering. So we should all be focused to break out of this suffering, okay? We don't want to come and study from kindergarten to 12th grade and then to college and all of that, and then be in constant anxiety, and then worry about a job, and then worry about whether I'll have the job. We don't want that. We don't want bodily suffering. We don't want suffering from nature. We don't want suffering from people. So we need to break this cycle, and the only way to break this cycle is understanding Bhagavad Gita, following what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told us, and then we will definitely break out of this cycle and we will reach that world where there is no suffering, no anxiety, no lamentation, no competition, no bank balance worries, no stock market worries, and we will be fully focused on one thing, enjoying when Krishna enjoys. Who doesn't want to enjoy? We all want to enjoy. I mean, it would be a lie to say I don't want to enjoy. We all want to enjoy, but our enjoyment is so little. And then our suffering becomes so big. So let's break this cycle. Let's say, I want to enjoy forever. And that doesn't mean enjoy in the material platform. This chapter will tell us more about how those people who try to enjoy in this material world, they really don't get enjoyment. So the Bhagavad Gita comprises of 18 chapters. And it is divided into 3 sections, okay? The middle 6, okay? The chapter 7 is the beginning of the middle 6 chapters, are the most confidential chapters. And the first 6 and the last 6 are protective coverings of the confidential knowledge. Lord Chaitanya has already taught us, Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapita Niyamita Smaranena Kala. Etadrishi Tava Kripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaivam Idrisham Ihajani Nanuraga. Which means you, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you have given us this, what do you call it, magic bullet? What is that silver bullet they say that will get us through? That is what he's given us. Simple. And all we have to do is follow his instructions. And he has also said, listen, I'll make it easy for you. This is not going to be with any hard and fast rules. You don't need any qualifications, because there are many mantras where you need qualifications to chant those mantras. This is a mantra anybody can chant. At any time, in any place. Even if you're eating, you can chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Even if you're getting ready to go to sleep, you can chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. You're driving, you can chant. Lord Chaitanya has put no rules on this. Imagine, you get that free pass, no conditions, no rules. All you have to do is use your free pass. And we are like, really? Maybe if it is free, it is not worth it. Because we come from the mentality that only something that we have to pay for is good. But we have to pay for this also, and we have to pay for this by doing our duty. So, so in this chapter, it's named Knowledge of the Absolute Truth. So absolute is defined in Srimad Bhagavatam. The absolute truth is realized in three progressive features. One is the all-pervasive spiritual energy, Brahman. Second, the higher than that is realization. Realization of the all-pervasive and the localized feature, Paramatma, who is God Krishna sitting in our heart. And actually, you know, they have a full transcript and a record of every activity we do. One time, I remember when I was a kid, we were at a stationery store and I liked a pencil, and my mother said that pencil is too expensive. I was maybe 5 years old. And I kept the pencil in my hand and nobody noticed, and I walked out with that pencil and I told my mother, look, you didn't have to pay for it because it was expensive. My mother said, why did you do that? I said, nobody saw it. She said, Krishna saw it. Krishna sees everything. She took me back to the store. She made me apologize and made me return the pencil, and she said, there is no way I'm buying you this pencil, because now even more so because you did this. You have to understand, even if nobody is watching you, Krishna is watching you. That is why they also say a devotee's conduct is not what they present in front of everybody. It is what you do when nobody is watching you. It is your relationship with Krishna. Only Krishna and you know the truthfulness and loyalty of this relationship. Others may think, oh, you're such a great person and this and that. No, that is all exterior. The reality is that is not important. What is important is how Krishna sees us. And that is what we are working on. So, the second part of absolute truth is realizing the pervasive Brahman and the localized feature, Paramatma. And then the ultimate feature of the absolute truth, Bhagavan, realizing Bhagavan as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the speaker of Bhagavad Gita. So throughout Bhagavad Gita, they say, what do they say? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. They say Shri Bhagavan Uvacha because he is the absolute truth, Bhagavan, absolute truth. And we have to use this life. For many of us, half this life is gone. So let me give you the bad news. Time is ticking. And if we are still not making use of this life, then we are not going to be able to reach that place of no suffering and all enjoyment. So if we want no suffering and all enjoyment, we've got to make the effort to get there. So there are 30 verses in chapter 7. The first 3 verses tell us about understanding Krishna. So if we, just to connect the dots here, at the end of chapter 6, Krishna gave his opinion to Arjuna when he talked about the different yogis. He said, my dear Arjuna, first of all, it is better to be a yogi than a karmi. Okay, karmis are, think of it like traders. You give me this, barters, I give you that. But of all kinds of yogis, because there are so many different kinds of yogis, there's karma yogi, jnana yogi, hatha yogi, kriya yogi, many different kinds of yogis. Of all the yogis, Krishna said that of all these yogis, the topmost yogi is bhakti yogi. Krishna is giving us the formula, he's giving us the way, he's not setting rules and conditions, and he's telling us over and over again that bhakti yoga is the topmost. And who is a bhakti yogi? Shraddhavan. Shraddhavan is bhakti yogi. He who is completely faithful to Krishna, completely devoted. That's where they say the word surrender. Where does surrender come from? Our faith. So if you are completely faithful, you will surrender. Like in our house, Rahul doesn't even know which banks have the, which bank accounts we have. He doesn't know the passwords. I always tell him, if something happens to me, you're going to be in trouble. But he has faith, so that is why he doesn't have to worry. So one big thing is, whenever you worry, you ask yourself, why am I worrying? The fact that I'm worrying is proof that I still don't have faith in Krishna. Because if you have faith in Krishna, you're going to say, I can only do what I can do. I cannot worry. And the rest, the result is not in my control. And this has been said repeatedly in Bhagavad Gita. So after chapter 6, when Krishna says that the topmost yogi is the bhakti yogi, then he starts explaining to Arjuna that we should hear about Krishna. Okay? Since Krishna is giving confidential knowledge, he wants Arjuna to listen with rapt attention, that you do not let your mind wander or be diverted to hear what I'm saying. And then in the third verse, Krishna explains that actually someone who understands Krishna to be very, very rare, because first of all, people are not, someone who understands this is very, very rare, because first and foremost, I know people who do book distribution have that experience a lot. And I tried book distribution 2 times, and I can tell you it was a very, very hard thing to do. It's a lot easier to cook bhoga and do the offering, or do the class and do the arti, because you're associating with people who are listening. Book distribution is very humbling. So my respects to everybody who does book distribution. So it says, first of all, most people are not interested in spiritual life, okay? So, and those who have some interest, those who have achieved some level of perfection, they say, I already know everything. You go to India, you give Bhagavad Gita. When my mother goes every December for Gita Jayanti to raise funds, everybody says, why do you come every year? And last year also you gave us Bhagavad Gita. This year also you're giving us books. We know, we've read the Bhagavad Gita. But the Bhagavad Gita is not a book to read for scholarly purposes. People will read Bhagavad Gita, write scientific papers on Bhagavad Gita, and you'll see so many different versions and commentaries, and they call themselves scholars. Somebody says, you should read that person's Bhagavad Gita. He's written a really good thing. And then there are some lines of faith where they read Bhagavad Gita, but they are very clear. This is only a message. There was no Krishna and no Arjuna and no battlefield of Kurukshetra. So here is the thing. When we read Bhagavad Gita, we have to read with faith. That is very important. We have to read knowing that Krishna is speaking directly. And that is why Krishna said having that rapt attention is very important. To realize Bhagavan, to realize Bhagavan as he is very, 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 very rarely achieved. So, out of those who have achieved perfection, Krishna says, maybe you will find someone who understands me. So you see, it's like, you start with 8 billion people, you keep narrowing down, how many are spiritual, then you narrow down further, how many are, worshipping and doing devotional service, then you narrow it down further, how many are have faith and not doing it for scholarly fame, then you narrow it down further, how many are doing it with the purity of their heart, then you narrow it down further and say, how many actually understand that Krishna, who understand Krishna? Very, very, very few. So now, when I read this verse, I'm like, okay, so should we do it? Should we not do it? Of course we should do it. And that's what this chapter says further. There are in the next 3 verses, Krishna explains there are 2 different prakritis, 2 different natures, energies. And Radha Govind Prabhu talked about this last week. There's material energy and there's spiritual energy. Then material energy is also 8 different kinds of material energies. Earth, water, fire, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. And then there is superior energy, and Krishna has said this is superior, okay? So no questions asked there. So what is it? What is the difference between material and spiritual energy? Krishna does not enjoy material energy, okay? Krishna enjoys the superior spiritual energy, the superior nature. And in this section of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, what is the spiritual nature or energy which is superior to material energy? It comprises of living entities, jiva, which was the very first thing that Krishna explained in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2. You are not the body, you are the soul. You are not, he explained the difference between matter and spirit. So this is the first thing we need to understand. And the verse today that the children covered also covered this, that I am not the body, because this body is of inferior nature. It's made of material, right? The soul, the nature of the soul is spiritual and superior energy. We invest a lot of time in this body, okay? Feeding the body, which we need to do for survival, because if we don't have a body, then how will we do any activity? You know, taking care, vitamins, healthy food, do all of that, right? So it is our duty, Krishna has given us this body, it is our duty to take care of this body. But it is our duty, prime duty, to take care of the soul. You never find gyms for the soul. You only find gyms for the body, right? We probably need to start a new concept. This is soul gym. So Krishna says these living entities who are in the material world, they are trying to exploit the material energy for sense gratification. They are utilizing it to serve, or they are utilizing it to serve him. So there are two kinds of people. One who only want, I want to maintain my beauty, my health, you know, whatever it is, because it gives me satisfaction, it makes me happy. And one who says, I don't, you know, I have this wealth, I don't want to use it necessarily for buying all those brand name handbags or shoes or whatever. It's not important to me. What's important to me is how I serve Krishna with those resources. So we talked about resources earlier. Who gave us these resources? Krishna did. And the best way to utilize these resources is in service of Krishna. So coming to the material, there are two purposes of material energy. Because then I wondered, so why is there material energy? Why wasn't everything just spiritual energy, right? If Krishna says spiritual energy is superior, then why did we get material energy? Why did he give us this inferior energy? There are two purposes. Coming to the material world, the soul has two options, okay? Some souls are trying to enjoy this material energy. The material energy was not made for us to enjoy it. It was actually made for us to use it in service of Krishna. And because we enjoy this material energy, exploit all nature's resources, that is the root cause of misery, okay? Everyone is fighting. Everybody wants to be more dominant than the other. I've seen it at, you know, spiritual places also. I've seen it in material places also, because we are not able to overcome that material energy. And everyone is there thinking, who can get maximum enjoyment? One day Gautam Adani is world's richest person, one day Elon Musk is world's richest person. They keep posting these lists of top schools, top people, most influential. Why? Why? Because everybody is focused, all the groups who are focusing, you know, 99.9% of the world is focused on material energy, and you will only put in front of people what sells. So we are constantly trying to get enjoyment, dominance. So that is what the material consciousness is. But Krishna did not give us this material consciousness for just our need. He had to give us means to serve him. That is why he gave this to us. And the other purpose, I said there are two purposes. The other purpose of this material manifestation, so one is for enjoyment, because it's a choice, and the other purpose is we use it for serving Krishna. For example, the temple, you know, it cost a lot of money to buy this temple, but it is made of material elements, okay? We decorate it, fresh flowers and, you know, beautiful clothes and jewelry. So that all takes material resources, right? But we are not doing this for our own personal enjoyment. We are doing it for the glorification of the Lord, for Krishna's enjoyment. Because when Krishna is happy, we are automatically going to be happy. Because we have a soul connection with Krishna. I know they keep talking about soul mate. There's nothing such as soul mate. If we have any soul mate, it is Krishna. Okay? In the material world, there is no soul mate. We only have a soul connection with Krishna. And then the next section of chapter 7 talks about how everything in the material world rests on Krishna. And Radha Govind Das covered this last week, that it's like the pearls resting on the thread. That way the energies and everything in the material world is resting on Krishna. Krishna is actually keeping this material world together. I mean, can you imagine if the sun decided not to rise, or if weathers were, we had complete winter for the whole year, there would be disaster materially. Krishna's energies are keeping this material world together. And then in the next section, Krishna explains about the material energy. Even though it is inferior energy, it has the same potency as Krishna. Okay? And because it's Krishna's potency, now anything that Krishna creates is very powerful, right? Because it's Krishna's potency, it is insurmountable. It is too powerful to overcome. Therefore, Krishna gives us one solution to get rid of the clutches of material nature. And he says, the only way you can get rid of the clutches of material nature is by surrendering to him. That is the way to escape the material energy. Those who try to exploit material energy, what happens to them? Ultimately, they are frustrated. They become entangled in the material energy. And speaking of entanglement, this is a first-hand personal experience of a friend who we met in 1998, I think. And he was 29 or whatever, 28, 27 at that time. And he said, once I make, comes from a very spiritual background, once I make $5 million, then I'm going to go and do Krishna Bhakti. Okay? In 2012, he made $20 million. So I reminded him. I said, hey, you had said once you, and he sitting in the temple, he told me, once you get $5 million, you're going to go Krishna Bhakti. He said, I'm just 40-something. It's maybe I'm not ready for it mentally. I want to do one more venture, and after that I will dedicate myself. I was like, okay. So then it took him from 2012 to 2022. He had this company, and he was, exploiting his own body. So he was making his own self suffer health-wise. No balance, nothing. And one day he said, I am so tired of this. I'm praying to Krishna. Krishna, once you get me out of this, once I can get to a successful landing on this, after that, I am just going to dedicate my life. That happened in July of 2022. So last week I was talking to him and I said, you remember you had said this? He's like, I know. And I said, you've been making all these promises to Krishna. He's like, no, but I have a very important thing at hand. So now it's not about money. Because what does human being tend to do? First, we try and fulfill our basic needs, right? Food, clothing, shelter. Then we try and accumulate wealth. Once we've accumulated wealth, we want more wealth. Then we say, okay, now I don't need more wealth, because a lot of people say, I'm not doing this for money. You hear that a lot. Then they're doing it for fame, okay? Because now that taste is very new and very nice. So then they're doing it for fame. And with fame, then they want power also. They're like, I need to be, governor here, or I need to be this, so I have power. This is just entanglement, and I have witnessed this firsthand, and I reminded him last week. I said, you know what? You have been lying to Krishna all this time, okay? And you have been breaking your promises. I'm telling you one thing, you have less than half life left. You are not willing to come? Sure, don't come. but you're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I don't think you enjoyed those 10 years or 20 years of your life when you were working hard to make money. You were suffering day and night. You ruined your health, okay? And, imbalance in the family, nothing. So what are you doing this for? He's like, I know, but I have a knowing doing gap. And so he's admitting, you know why? Because, so here is the reason why. And I heard this in Nirantar Prabhu's lecture. The reason these scholarly people who write about Bhagavad Gita, they don't have the feelings in their heart. Because those feelings don't come till you practice. That is the difference between theory and practice. Nobody becomes a doctor by just reading a book. They make you go through actually practical experience. So reading Bhagavad Gita is important for the knowledge and for the understanding. But our journey doesn't stop there. You have to practice. Because until you practice, and you practice to the point that you keep getting better, you're not going to see results, and you're not going to develop that love for Krishna. So, because you're going to be attached to something or the other. Either you're going to be attached to material or you're going to be attached to Krishna. So we make the choice who we want to be attached to. And because human nature is to be attached. So the more we keep pushing ourselves in the direction of attaching ourselves to Krishna, the more we will be less attached to material world. Then in the next section, Krishna talks about surrendering. And he says there are 4 kinds of people who will never surrender to Krishna. Who are these 4 people? Very important to know. They are known as mudhas, those who work day and night trying to exploit the material nature and think that they are the controller. They are like, I'm not surrendering because I have a lot to do, and Krishna is not going to pay my bills, so I have to do all this. So that is the first sign, mudha. Then there are those who think of themselves as very learned. We talked about scholarly people, very learned. And because they are so puffed up in their own abilities and they think, I did this, they're like, why do I need to surrender to Krishna? Because I understand everything, so I don't need to surrender to Krishna. And then there are those, the Naradma, the human beings who have no interest in understanding. And therefore, they are called two-legged animals. Because you have no interest, you are just wanting to enjoy life, exploit life, and you're saying, I don't need to do all this. I want to know when is the next, how do I give my body the next enjoyment? They think the purpose of life is to enjoy. You must have heard people say, you live only one life, so live it fully. I say, you live only one life, so live it carefully, okay? Make it meaningful. Durlabha manava janama satsange taraho e bhava sindhure. This human birth is very rare, and we read in the verse that even in this human birth, one who understands Krishna is very, very, very rare. And the only way we can break through this cycle of misery and suffering is by crossing that ocean. Think of it, if you have to cross an ocean, you cannot swim. You need the right boat that can get you there, and this is the boat. So, and why is it, and that is why you need, if it is an ocean, it is a long journey. Don't think of this as a motorized ship. We all have to, do our part on that boat, and that is why we come together. That is why Satsanga is important. And then the last class of people who will never surrender to Krishna is Asura, the atheist, who not only reject God, but who defies God and hate people even who believe in God. They are the worst. Early in my journey in spiritual life, when I did not read scriptures, but I was just following it because my parents asked me to follow it, one person, Indian person, who she said, I don't believe in this worship and all. It's only the weak people who go and worship God. I'm like, really? And she's like, only if you don't have the mental strength, then you go worship Lord. Then you go to the temple. And she said, you see, most of the people who go to the temple are poor people or who are suffering. The rich people never go to the temple, and the people who are confident of themselves don't go to the temple. And I started thinking, yeah, actually it is a fact what she's saying. But I did not have the knowledge to understand that there are 4 kinds of people who will not surrender, and she's one of those 4. Okay? That is why getting knowledge is also very important. Then Krishna says there are 4 kinds of people who begin to surrender because they are pious. So why do people surrender to Krishna? Why do they adopt devotional service? Because they are not sinful. They're not as sinful. Let's put it this way. We are all sinful, but not as sinful. So your credit is higher, okay, with Krishna. So to begin the surrender to Krishna, you need something to spark that interest, okay? So they say, those who are in distress, so this goes back to what my friend said, in those who are in distress, they will go to Krishna, okay, because they feel that there is some relief I will get. So they have some faith, okay? And then those who are curious and inquisitive, so they want to learn more about Krishna. So they go to Krishna, they're like, who is Krishna? And let me find out a little more about him, because I have that spark or that I need to learn about this, okay? And as they learn, Krishna reveals himself to them. And then there's a person who wants to come to the, and then there is the person who wants and will come to the understanding. Then there's somebody who says, no, I just want to go to Krishna. I have this inner desire, I have this attraction to Krishna. They have factually acknowledged that they have a spiritual master, they want to accept the Shastras, that is the 4th kind of person. And then they are on the quick path to Krishna. So there are many different journey points, and I'm sure we also started from one of those journey points, and everybody is at a different point in the journey. So keep preaching, but do not get frustrated, and do not disrespect somebody who is farther behind in their journey, because then we are not being humble and we are not giving respect to others. And then the next section of this chapter is called referred to as the facts regarding demigod worship. So in 4 verses, Krishna explains why he does not approve and why he does not recommend the worship of demigods. First of all, Krishna says people who are worshipping demigods because, they want to enjoy material things. So really their heart is not clean. They're like, okay, I will go and pray for this, and then God give me this, then I'll do that. They come into the barter trade. And they think that if I worship demigods, I'll get my desires fulfilled. Very motivated. Krishna says that even though their hearts are hankering for material desires, they do not know that the demigods are not independent. Demigods cannot satisfy or fulfill desires independently. Those demigods who everyone worships, regardless of the name, okay, is not independent. They must get sanctioned by Krishna. There is this verse, Maiva Vihitan Hitan. This means, but in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. So the demigod has Krishna in the heart. Durga Devi is worshipping Krishna. Lord Shiva is worshipping Krishna. They have Krishna in their heart. And when Krishna in their heart actions them, okay, you can grant this, then somebody's material desires are fulfilled. Another reason Krishna does not approve worship of demigods is that anything we achieve from demigods is material. And everything that is material is limited and temporary. Okay? So, what does the soul need? The soul does not need something that is limited. The soul needs unlimited fulfillment, unlimited happiness. So, material fulfillment is limited, so it will never be enough. So, I still remember a few years ago, and it took me some real life experience to witness this. I was working very hard for my promotion, okay? Very hard. I mean, did 12, 14 hours of work, did everything, left nothing. Everything was perfect, got promoted, got a good salary increase. Was very happy for a few days. After that I said, what next? Now what do I do? And because that is what material does. It is like putting ghee in the lamp. Every time you get something material, you're putting ghee in the lamp of material desires. The lamp glows further and burns further. So there is no end to material desires. And not only are material desires limited, but they are very, very temporary. You feel the pleasure for a little bit, and after that you're like, yeah, now it doesn't matter. Even if we go to heavenly planets by doing all this good karma, like, our friend whose example I'm giving, he does a lot of charity, helps a lot of people, he does a lot of good karma. So what will happen with that? We'll go to maybe heavenly planets or come back to this life with a very good life, but even they have to come back, or those who go to heavenly planets. That is not a permanent place, that is also a 5-star hotel, think of it that way. And you cannot stay in a 5-star hotel forever. Once you cannot pay the bills anymore, then you come back. And you start your journey again. So then this chapter ends, and we're almost there, with Krishna explaining who can and who cannot understand God. So it is in the 4th chapter, Krishna explains that the reason he's explaining Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna is because Arjuna has 2 qualifications. Bhakto si me sakha cheti. Arjuna, I'm speaking this Bhagavad Gita to you because you are my devotee and you are my friend. If you want to understand Krishna, first thing is, like one of the children explained that you have to be in the mode of goodness to even, you have to first cleanse your heart because you have to become sinless. And, we have some rules, regulations that is a starting point that we take up, and we have to follow those very strictly, the 4 regulations. Then we have to be submissive, not challenge God or challenge, people say, oh, you believe in God, show me God. This is a very common thing. You don't have the eyes to see God. God is everywhere. You cannot see something for which you don't have the vision, right? If somebody says, show me the Himalayas now, I'm sitting here, you cannot see because you cannot see something so far. Similarly, we don't have the purity of eyes. And then Krishna says in chapter 4 that you must accept a spiritual master and you must serve the spiritual master. So this is how you go to Krishna. You must inquire from the spiritual master submissively in a service mood. And Krishna says that understanding Bhagavad Gita and coming to the platform of surrendering to Krishna is the topmost platform of life. In this age of Kali, only one sacrifice is recommended, Sankirtana, complete glorification. This includes chanting on our beads every day, Hare Krishna Mahamantra, doing Sankirtan, and doing everything to glorify and serve Krishna. And this verse says, it's in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says, the last line says, Yajanti hi sumedhasah. So, who will do this yagya, Sankirtan yagya? Sumedhasa means someone who is very, very intelligent. Medha means intelligence, and when you put su in front of it, it becomes very. So if someone is doing Sankirtan, chanting and glorifying the Lord, that person is very intelligent and very rare. So as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Namaiva Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gatir Anyatha. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way, no other way, no other way. It is said 3 times. Got to be important, right? So let us all chant together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you. I always try, but I don't guarantee answers, so we refer them to you, Prabhu, then.
Yeah. Devotees, please raise your hand if you have any question, who are in the temple hall and who are on the online as well. Okay, Rohini Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Please don't glorify the class. You can send offline messages because the time constraint. You can directly go into the question. Thank you.
Mataji, as Prabhu mentioned, I cannot say that. Krishna is the real soulmate in each and every jiva in this material world. That is true. When we are in a difficult situation, we will understand, like when we start like devotion. But what is the reason behind we gel with the more, with some people, only few people only?
When you say that, you're saying that, like friendships and other things, that your chemistry matches only with a few people. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, Mataji.
Yeah, I think that is a lot of this our nature comes from everything we've been doing life after life. So somebody by nature is lazy, somebody by nature is hardworking. And there's a lot of science on nature versus nurture, but because we are always we try to seek comfort with those who are like us. So we find that equation with those who think like I cannot be friends with somebody who's going to the bar every day because I don't have much in common with them. So I think we are all trying to find a common ground, which is why we also say come to the temple, because if you're isolated, it is harder to feel inspired because you're not giving each other that push. So I think it is based on our nature. And based on our nature and our activities that we are doing, that is why we like certain people and we don't like to associate with certain people.
Thank you, Mataji.
Prabhu, anything?
And also the emotional world has to intersect. Okay, so as Mataji was saying, the likes, dislikes, our activities, all those things, if they intersects two people's emotional world, that's where the association happens. Sangat sanjayate kama. So the association happens when there is a desire, both have the same desire. That's where the association happens. So you have to be very careful, because if you have bad desire, you associate with the bad people. Good desire, you associate with good people. So it all based on the desire only. So you have to be very careful. So the emotional world has to intersect. So they say, right, the bee comes and sits on your nose. It's sitting on your nose. Are you associating with the bee? No. Somebody may be sitting in the flight we fly to India, almost 23 hours, somebody is sitting next to us. Are we really associating with them? Proximity-wise, they are very close. So, but when you talk to people and there is an emotional exchange and that intersection happens, then the association really happens. Make sense? Okay. But nice answer, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
It's not a question, the comment. I like the point you mentioned. Why we need to read only the Bhagavad Gita, who we translated by a devotee, not any scholar, because it remains an intellectual entertainment. There is no transformation at all. There is no use. Ravana has no full knowledge, but it's remain useless.
Yeah.
Wonderful point, Mataji. Thanks for mentioning. Anybody who wants to add any question or comment? Yeah, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. So I was reading a lecture, watching the lecture of Namita Mataji. She's life coach from the Krishna consciousness. So she added a point that I want to add here also. So she said, so everyone comes in our life, like soul has her own journey, but if someone is coming in our life, has a purpose, and that's come from the past life. So like who are coming, so maybe they are not like from the same mindset or different mindset. good people or bad people, any kind of people, but they have a purpose to be in the life, in our own life, and to exchange some things which are like need to be like from the past lives. So it's
It's a
given and
karmic
take.
equation.
Yeah. So it's given and take, and that's the reason they are like come in the life, and then we attach with them or we just hate them. That's the one of the reason.
Yeah, and you see, sometimes you have children who give more to their parents than who take from their parents. And sometimes you have children who take more from their parents or give less to their parents. Likewise, in any relationship, there are these, one person is leaning in more than the other. And that's because of our past, past hisab, what they say, that we have to even out. And that is why they say, as long as we are continuously going to be involved in all that, we cannot get out. So even if you do too much good karma, but you're not focusing on Krishna, you will have to come back to then for somebody to repay you on that good karma. And you will, when you come back, there is going to be misery, there's going to be suffering. So that is why the only way to nullify all of this is by offering everything, keeping Krishna at the center of everything you do. Thank you, everyone. Oh, okay.
Okay, final call. Anyone have any question or a comment? Who are on online as well? Okay. Thank you, Mataji, for a wonderful lecture. Hare Krishna. Devotees, please rise. We'll have Aarti now. Amruta Mataji will sing. Purnamasi Mataji will do Pujari service.
New Grace. Is it like last week or this week only? Last week, is it Sunday? No, that was on Thursday.
नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Neel Madhav Radha, Neel Madhav Radhe. Jaya Radha Shyam Sundar Radha, Shyam Sundar Radhe. Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura, Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimati His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki,
प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवसदि गौर भक्त वृंद की, श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की, वृंदावन धाम की, नवदीप धाम की, यमुना देवी, गंगा देवी, तुलसी देवी, भक्ति देवी की, बृहत मृदंगा की, हरिनाम संकीर्तन की, सामवेद भक्त वृंद की, गौर प्रेमानंदे, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Hare Krishna Temple of Austin ki.
Yes, Sahana?
Namaste Narasimhaya.
प्रहलादलाददायिने प्रहलादलाददायिने हिरण्यकाशिपूर्वक्षः हिरण्यकाशिपूर्वक्षः शीलालङ्कानकालाये शीलकाङ्कानकालाये हितो नरसिंहो परतो नरसिंहो हितो नरसिंहो परतो नरसिंहो यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंहो यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंहो बाहे नरसिंहो हृदये नरसिंहो बाहे नरसिंहो हृदये नरसिंहो नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपद्ये नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपद्ये
कर कमल वरे नाकाम अद्भुत सिंगाम ललिता हिरण्यकशिपो तनुभृङ्गाम् कवग्रीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा निताय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौरा हरि बोल जय जय Thank you Amruta Mataji, that's a wonderful Kirtan. Thank you Jishnu.